Hello, my sleepless dreamers. Tonight we're slipping into a silk-draped whisper of ancient Persia, where queens wore perfume like armor, goats unknowingly harvested luxury, and the desert air was so scented it practically sighed. If you adore slow-burning history with a touch of sleepy sarcasm and fragrant mystery, you're in the right palace. Tap subscribe like you're gently uncorking a bottle of rose oil, and tell us in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it in your dreamy little corner of the world? Now, lie back, breathe in, and let the night unfold, drop by fragrant drop. The desert is quiet tonight. Not the eerie silence of an empty room or the awkward hush after someone brings up politics at dinner, but that deep, ancient hush, like the sand is holding its breath. The stars above you aren't twinkling. They're lounging, lazily sprawled across a velvet sky, watching the earth yawn. And below them, you walk along a winding path of pressed dust, cooled by nightfall through the heart of ancient Persia, where royalty doesn't just live, it smells spectacular. You hear the soft shuffle of your sandals. They're leather, of course, slightly too big, probably borrowed from someone important. The scent of distant myrrh hovers in the breeze, curling from a brazier down the street, though you're not entirely sure if it's supposed to be a perfume, a prayer, or just someone trying to mask the scent of camel. In the distance, a palace glows, not with neon or Instagrammable fairy lights, but with tall oil lamps and lanterns filtered through dyed silk. Gold threads glimmer in the curtains. Someone inside is humming. A tune slow as honey, maybe a lullaby, maybe a threat. It's hard to tell sometimes with royals. A eunuch passes you. He nods. You nod. He carries a tray of glass bottles, tall, narrow, filled with shimmering liquids, rose water, saffron oil, perhaps a drop or two of something with crushed emeralds, because why not rub precious stones into your pulse points if you're a queen in 500 BCE? And speaking of queens, tonight you're following in the faint sandal prints of Queen Parysatis, wife of Darius II, a woman known for her perfumes, her politics, and her tendency to not forgive people who crossed her. In fact, one source claims she once had a servant flayed for serving the wrong wine. You, luckily, are just here for the olfactory tour. The air here is thick with scent, not just the usual desert mix of dates, dust and pride, but resins melting in incense bowls and crushed petals soaking in goat milk. Persian queens didn't wear perfume, they commanded it. Scents were brewed over coals, distilled in copper stills and stored in glass phials carved with cuneiform blessings. And here's your fun fact of the night. Ancient Persian women sometimes wore their favorite perfumes in hollowed-out beads woven into their hair, functional and fashionable. Now, whether those beads were actually effective or just made you smell like a heady walking fruit basket is something historians still politely bicker about over hummus at academic conferences. But one thing's for sure, if you're planning on meeting the Queen tonight, you'd better not smell like sweat and fear. You probably won't make it through this day, which honestly is a relief. That means you can relax. So, before we slip deeper into silk-curtained rooms and gold-scented schemes, go ahead and gently tap that like button with your sleepy thumb. Maybe even subscribe if your eyes aren't already halfway closed. And leave us a comment with your location and what time it is there. We love imagining our desert dreamers across time zones. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. The lamps are flickering, the music is soft, and someone just uncorked a bottle of jasmine oil by mistake. You enter through a side gate, not the grand one where the guards in feathered helmets grumble about taxes and spoonfuls of stolen honey. This smaller gate is for quiet arrivals, like yours. Inside, the air thickens with fragrance, not overpowering, Not like walking into a modern perfume store and immediately regretting your life choices, but gentle layers, warm amber, smoky frankincense, something vaguely citrus if you breathe just right. A servant guides you down a corridor lined with glazed tiles, each one painted with scenes of lions lounging like house cats and archers standing in poses no archer has ever naturally stood in. There's a tiny dish of rose paste on the window ledge, left by a noblewoman in a hurry, or maybe by someone who didn't realize rose paste and date jam look identical in low light. You pass a bathing chamber where steam swirls around marble walls. Here, queens begin their nightly routines, not with a splash of cold water, but with milk baths steeped in lavender and crushed almonds. That's your historical fact for this part of the palace. Ancient Persian royalty bathed not just to clean, but to layer scent, one aromatic veil at a time. By the time they were done, their skin carried the memory of half a spice market. From somewhere nearby, you hear soft laughter. Maybe it's the queen herself, or maybe a concubine named something like Shirin, which means sweet. A pet monkey scampers across the rafters above, wearing a silver bell collar. You choose not to question it. Palaces are strange like that. You pass a shelf lined with tiny ceramic bottles. Some are sealed with wax, others still damp at the neck. One is labeled in old Persian script you can't quite read, but your guide whispers it's distilled night rain. That sounds suspiciously like someone bottled spring water and gave it a poetry name, but you're too polite to ask. And then there's that smell. A bit musky, a little too earthy to be romantic, like someone tried to perfume an old sandal. Galbanum, your guide mutters. Used for centuries in Persia, prized for its strange ability to smell both fresh and ancient. Obscure fact. Galbanum was thought to chase away melancholy and snakes. Not necessarily in that order. Historians still scratch their heads over whether some of these scents were meant for seduction, ceremony, or warding off the neighbor's evil eye. Maybe all three. The line between perfume and potion was blurrier than a desert mirage. And yet, as you breathe in this heady haze, you start to notice your shoulders drop, your breath slowing, your thoughts beginning to wander, less about to-do lists, more about tile patterns and whether you could pull off a silk turban. Remember the eunuch from earlier? He just dropped a vial. It rolls past your feet, trailing a little splash of orange blossom oil, as if the floor itself needs a refresher. This palace isn't just a place. It's an aroma you fall into, a scent that rewrites the air around your skin. And if you're not careful, you might forget the way back out. Now you're in the perfumery, not the kind with fluorescent lighting and salespeople named Chloe. This is a quiet, arched chamber deep inside the palace, dimly lit with oil lamps and warm from the steady simmer of copper kettles. The floor is soft with woven reed mats. The air smells like a memory you can't quite place. Sweet, smoky, and somehow both clean and ancient. You sit, because everyone here sits. No one rushes. Time itself seems to have been lulled to sleep, possibly by a waft of sandalwood. At the center of the room is a low marble table cluttered with small bronze tools, crumpled linen pouches, and a mortar so stained it must have crushed 1,000 flowers. Your nose twitches. Someone is grinding cloves with honey and something else. Maybe ground lotus petals. Maybe someone's idea of what the moon would smell like. A woman in a gauzy white robe steps forward. She's not the queen, but she's important. You can tell because her hair is braided with fine chains and she doesn't even glance at you. Royal perfume makers didn't need to acknowledge visitors. They were half alchemist, half oracle, and fully unbothered. She dips a reed into a viscous green fluid and waves it gently in front of your face. It smells complex, like the breath of the desert just before a storm. This, she murmurs, is Badranj Boya, Persian lemon balm, a key ingredient in the Queen's favorite blend. It's calming, clarifying, and possibly capable of making your enemies weep from envy. Possibly. Historical fact for the hour: the perfume known as Katrani Persia, or Persian pitch oil, was exported across the ancient world, including to Greece and India. It came from pine tar, boiled and blended with myrrh or saffron, and was used for everything from skincare to offerings to gods who probably smelled better than we ever will. Now here's something delightfully odd. In some ceremonies, Persians burned perfumed wool in censers to scent the air before a royal entrance. Wool, as in sheep. Somewhere, a priest decided smoky sheep aroma was the height of regal presentation. Historians are still trying to decide how that trend began. You glance at the stone shelves along the wall, tiny bottles made of lapis turquoise carved alabaster. Each one holds a story you'll never finish reading. There's a vial labeled in faint script: "For moonlight nights and difficult men." You blink. She smiles. It's a joke. Probably. Meanwhile, someone is gently crushing cardamom in the corner, and you realize your eyelids are starting to drift. Not shut exactly, just heavier, like they're being perfumed too. And outside, somewhere in the night, a tambourine rings softly. Not a party, just a signal that the Queen is preparing for her evening walk through the garden. If you follow, there may be rose petals on the breeze. Or she might be in a mood. You can never really tell with royalty. You rise, slowly, like your joints just remembered they're from 500 BCE, and follow the distant sound of soft footsteps and tinkling jewelry into the palace garden. It's not the neat kind with trimmed hedges and well-behaved fountains. This one is wild in the way only royalty can afford. Pomegranate trees stretching like dancers, moonflowers opening with a quiet sigh, and narrow channels of running water murmuring ancient gossip to the reeds. The Queen is already there. You don't see her yet, but you feel her, like the hush before something lovely and mildly terrifying happens. A silk curtain sways. A scent drifts on the air. Saffron, mostly, with an undertone of cedar and the faintest whisper of spikenard. One of those perfumes that smells like wealth, power, and someone who's probably reading your mind. You pause near a cypress tree that leans just enough to look dramatic. A cat slinks past you, not belonging to anyone but somehow managing to look more royal than most humans. It ignores you, of course. You expected nothing less. And now, the garden begins to reveal its secrets. Your historical fact tonight: Persian royal gardens, or paradisa, were so renowned that the Greeks borrowed the word paradise from them. Imagine that. Paradise, scented with date blossoms and engineered shade, all because someone in the Achaemenid court knew how to make a rose climb a wall just so. You step onto a stone path lined with crushed lavender. Not metaphorically. It's literally crushed lavender. Every footstep releases a sigh of fragrance. It's unnecessary, extravagant, and completely perfect. Somewhere nearby, someone is brushing the Queen's hair with a comb dipped in almond oil. Another servant is burning something sticky and resinous in a shallow dish. Maybe benzoin, maybe just yesterday's leftovers. A jar near the bench reads, "Persian musk, harvested from civets who've been flattered first." You assume this is a joke, but then again, these people talk to stars and name perfumes after emotions. And here's your obscure tidbit of the evening. Elite Persian women often wore perfume-soaked silk sachets sewn discreetly into the folds of their dresses so that every movement released a faint, trailing scent. It wasn't about being noticed. It was about being remembered. There's a difference, and she knows it. As you stroll past a flowering quince bush, the queen appears from the shadows, not like in movies, not dramatic, just quietly inevitable. Her eyes meet yours briefly. She smells like a temple and a market stall on the first day of spring. You bow instinctively, forgetting you're not part of this world. But for now, you are. She nods, more to herself than to you, and continues walking. A servant follows behind her holding, of all things, a small bronze bowl of crushed mint, waving the scent into her wake like a royal breeze. You stay still, listening to the rhythm of sandals on stone, the whisper of perfumed air, the way the night curls around the garden like a sleeping cat. You probably won't be invited to join her. But then again, neither will anyone else. Later now. The palace is quieter, though not quite silent. Somewhere beyond the walls, a lyre plucks the same 3 notes over and over again, either a lullaby or someone practicing the art of almost getting it right. You wander back through the stone corridors, the air a little cooler now, the scents gentler, like they've exhaled with the night. You're in the queen's private chambers, not as lavish as you'd expect. Less gold, more cushions. Silk drapes sway faintly in the draft, stirred by fans made from ostrich feathers and patience. The room smells faintly of cinnamon and myrtle, layered over something floral that can't quite decide if it's noble or naughty. You try not to overthink it. On a small ivory table, you spot a series of shallow trays. Inside them, dried petals, cardamom pods, slivers of resin, a few delicate feathers that may or may not be ceremonial. One tray holds a rolled parchment with a list of ingredients, and next to it, an ink blot that looks suspiciously like a camel sneezing. You stare too long, and now that's all you can see. Here's tonight's historical gem. Ancient Persian queens often composed their own signature scent blends, sometimes kept secret from everyone, even their closest handmaidens. It wasn't just fragrance, it was identity, distilled. A queen could be recognized in the dark by a whiff of her personal perfume, long before anyone dared say her name. In a carved niche nearby sits a ceramic perfume warmer, its bowl flickering with low coals. Someone set in a chunk of labdanum, that sticky, aromatic resin gathered from the fur of goats who wandered through rock rose bushes. Yes, really. That's your obscure tidbit. Goats used to wear the ingredients of elite perfume before it was scraped off them by shepherds and sold to royalty. Somewhere, one goat is still bitter about it. You lean back onto a silk cushion, letting your weight sink into the fabric, and realize just how tired you are. The cushions smell faintly of lavender, with just a trace of saffron, a smell that makes you feel strangely regal and faintly like dessert. Your eyes trace the patterns on the ceiling, interlocking stars and vines, painted in muted colors. One of the vines curls in a way that looks like it's about to whisper something. Maybe it already did. The whole palace feels like a story being told in fragrance and shadow. Historians still debate whether these private chambers were used for sleep, meditation, or whispered diplomacy. It's possible they were used for all 3, often at the same time, depending on who was doing the whispering. You notice the cat again, curled at the foot of a chaise lounge, looking perfectly at home in a place built for queens. It's licking its paw, scented faintly with clove. Of course it is. You stretch your legs. Somewhere behind you, someone refills the incense. You didn't hear them enter. You don't hear them leave. The scent shifts, just a little. and your thoughts drift with it. The palace is dreaming now. So are you. The night folds in. Somewhere outside, a breeze picks up, light as silk, cool as memory. It rustles the tall cypress trees in the garden and carries the scent of last prayers, of desert earth, and of perfume still clinging to marble. You lie where you are, half sitting on embroidered cushions that were stitched by someone long gone but remembered, perhaps in scent alone. Here's tonight's historical gem. Ancient Persian queens often composed their own signature scent blends, sometimes kept secret from everyone, even their closest handmaidens. It wasn't just fragrance, it was identity, distilled. A queen could be recognized in the dark by a whiff of her personal perfume long before anyone dared say her name. In a carved niche nearby sits a ceramic perfume warmer, its bowl flickering with low coals. Someone set in a chunk of labdanum, that sticky, aromatic resin gathered from the fur of goats who wandered through rock rose bushes. Yes, really, that's your obscure tidbit. Goats used to wear the ingredients of elite perfume before it was scraped off them by shepherds and sold to royalty. Somewhere one goat is still bitter about it. You lean back onto a silk cushion, letting your weight sink into the fabric, and realize just how tired you are. The cushions smell faintly of lavender with just a trace of saffron, a smell that makes you feel strangely regal and faintly like dessert. Your eyes trace the patterns on the ceiling, interlocking stars and vines painted in muted colors. One of the vines curls in a way that looks like it's about to whisper something. Maybe it already did. The whole palace feels like a story being told in fragrance and shadow. Historians still debate whether these private chambers were used for sleep, meditation, or whispered diplomacy. It's possible they were used for all three, often at the same time, depending on who was doing the whispering. You notice the cat again, curled at the foot of a chaise lounge, looking perfectly at home in a place built for queens. It's licking its paw, scented faintly with clove. Of course it is. You stretch your legs. Somewhere behind you, someone refills the incense. You didn't hear them enter. You don't hear them leave. The scent shifts, just a little, and your thoughts drift with it. The palace is dreaming now. So are you. The night folds in. Somewhere outside, a breeze picks up, light as silk, cool as memory. It rustles the tall cypress trees in the garden and carries the scent of last prayers, of desert earth and of perfume still clinging to marble. You lie where you are, half sitting on embroidered cushions that were stitched by someone long gone, but remembered, perhaps, in scent alone. The room darkens further as the oil lamp burns low, its glow reduced to a gentle ember. The shadows no longer reach. Now they simply rest. The air is heavier now, not with heat but with softness. That peculiar hush of deep night in an ancient place. No rush, no sound. Only the long exhale of a palace used to being awake when the world is asleep. And just like that, you smell it again, rose attar. Faint, but unmistakable. Persian queens wore it not just for fragrance, but to soothe the mind and quiet the body. A few drops pressed into the wrists, behind the ears, even along the seams of their pillows. Its scent was a lullaby without words. Next to you, on a tiny silver dish, sits a half-burned cone of incense, still releasing lazy spirals of smoke. Frankincense this time, blended with dried orange peel and a bit of... Wait, is that crushed date stone? Possibly. The court's perfumer was always experimenting, or improvising. Obscure fact to lull you further. Some queens kept perfume jars by their beds not just for comfort, but to anoint their dreams. They believed scent could guide the soul in sleep, help them visit sacred gardens or divine distant omens. You just hope yours takes you somewhere with fewer stairs. There's a final sound, so soft you almost miss it. A handmaid adjusting your blanket, smoothing the corner, humming a tune older than language. You're not even sure she's real. Maybe it's the palace, tucking you in. No footsteps, no final line of dialogue, just the smell of rose, of crushed herbs, of a place that knew how to turn scent into a story. Now the palace drifts into silence. The kind of silence that doesn't need to be perfect, just present. The moon has shifted behind a silk-draped wall, its light faint and lazy. The last ember of the oil lamp sighs into stillness, the faintest curl of smoke dissolving into the night like a forgotten name. You lie still, and the world lies still with you. Around you the scent lingers, gentle, patient. A soft blend of rosewater and almond, a memory of saffron in the air. Not sharp, not loud, just there, like a distant harp note that never quite finishes. The palace no longer expects anything of you. You're not a visitor now. You've become part of its quiet, a breath in the corridor, a whisper on the silk, a figure in the garden seen from a window 1,000 years from now. The walls remember your passing. The floor remembers your step. Even the cat, now curled on a cushion near your feet, seems to acknowledge your existence with a purr that vibrates through sleep and stone. You don't need to move. Not yet. Not soon. Let the story soften. Let the perfume settle. Let the stars shift while you lie weightless in time. If your eyes are still open, they won't be for long. Tonight, you are scented in memory, in jasmine and amber, in the softness of a history too gentle to shout. Close your eyes, dreamer of gardens. You've walked with queens, you've inhaled forgotten winds, and now the story exhales you. Sleep well.